Welcome everyone to today's Explainer. Man, I am absolutely thrilled about this one because we're jumping headfirst into the world of JavaScript web scraping. If you're a developer looking to pull critical information from the web, whether that's to automate some tedious tasks, analyze market trends, or honestly just build something entirely new, you are entirely in the right place. We're going to navigate from the absolute basics all the way to handling those super complex, dynamically rendered web pages.
So here's a classic developer headache for you. You're building an application, you need to pull in some data from an external website, and naturally, the very first thing you do is look for an exposed API. But what happens when that official API just doesn't exist? Or, maybe the data is locked away behind a totally clunky interface. You obviously can't just give up on the feature, you need a different way in to get that data, and that is exactly the problem we're solving today.
Okay, here's our roadmap for this session. 1. The web scraping solution. 2. Parsing static HTML data. 3. Conquering dynamic web content. 4. Real-world dynamic scraping. And finally, 5. Essential scraping best practices. Let's dive right in.
The web scraping solution.
So, what exactly is web scraping? At its core, web scraping is a technique that lets you extract meaningful data from external websites by hunting down very specific DOM elements. Think of it like writing code that acts as a digital scout. It navigates to different web pages, figures out the HTML structures, and surgically extracts exactly the information you need from inside them. It's incredibly helpful for gathering and aggregating information. For instance, you could run a script to extract trending products from an e-commerce site over a few weeks, just to analyze what you should be selling to actually get some traction.
All right, to get started, we obviously need the right environment. We're going to use a Node.js environment to run our JavaScript. First, just make sure you have Node.js installed alongside your favorite IDE. Then, create a new directory, initialize a fresh NPM project, and finally, you're going to want to install two incredibly handy libraries. We need Cheerio, which we use to actually interact with the DOM elements, and Axios, which we'll use to fire off our HTTP requests. Run those quick installation commands, and your environment is totally ready to go.
Part 2. Parsing static HTML data.
Before we start slinging any actual code, we've got to do a little detective work. If you're familiar with HTML and CSS, this part is pretty intuitive. Basically, you need to inspect the target page to figure out which HTML elements are actually holding your data. You literally just open up your browser's developer tools, inspect the source code, and track down those elements. Your main goal here is to find the exact CSS selectors, like a specific class name or an ID, paired with the correct HTML tag so you can narrow down your target DOM element perfectly.
And this brilliantly illustrates how simple CSS selectors can grab exactly what we need. Let's say we want to scrape author names from the dzone website. Our dev tools would show us that those names live securely inside span tags with the class article author. So we use Axios to fetch the page, pass that response data right into Cheerio to convert it into HTML, and then we just grab all those span elements, pushing their text directly into an array. We can do the exact same thing for BBC headlines, but targeting H3 tags with the class GSC promo heading _ title. Boom! With just a handful of lines of code, you've got a clean list of news titles printing straight to your console.
Now, scraping static DOM elements, that's a great quick win. But here is where we hit the pivot. This is the developer's boss fight, if you will. While Axios and Cheerio are genuinely fantastic for static HTML, they're going to hit a massive brick wall when they face dynamically loaded single-page applications, or SPAs. When websites change their content dynamically on the fly, the identifying HTML element or CSS selector just isn't always going to be there on the initial request. So we need a totally different tool for the job.
Part 3. Conquering dynamic web content.
We have all been there. You find the literal perfect CSS selector, you run your script, and nothing. The array is just completely empty. It is incredibly frustrating. But this happens because modern websites heavily rely on JavaScript to load or update their content asynchronously. When your script fires off an HTTP request, it gets the raw HTML back way before the site's JavaScript is actually executed and populated the data. So yeah, static parsing simply won't cut it here.
To fix this, we're bringing out the heavy artillery, Puppeteer. Puppeteer is an absolutely wild node library that hands you a high-level API to control headless Chrome. Instead of just blindly grabbing the raw HTML, Puppeteer actually renders and interacts with the page exactly like a real user's browser would. This is a total game changer because it allows you to scrape data from dynamically generated content, since the page's JavaScript is fully, completely executed before you ever start trying to extract anything.
Part 4. Real-world dynamic scraping.
So the absolute crucial point here, it's timing.
When you tell Puppeteer to navigate to a page, you can't just immediately start hunting for DOM elements, because they probably aren't even there yet. You have to use functions like page.waitForSelector. This effectively pauses your script. It forces it to sit and wait until the specific asynchronous data actually populates the DOM. Only after that selector actually appears do we unleash the parser.
Let's look at a pretty notorious scraping challenge, data tables. Tables have super complex markup structures. Imagine we want to pull live cryptocurrency prices from CoinMarketCap. The data there is loaded dynamically right into a table. Using Puppeteer, we just wait for that table to load, then use document.querySelectorAll to grab all the rows. And here's a neat trick. We can write logic to ensure we only select rows that have at least 10 columns. That smartly skips right over the useless table headers. From there, we navigate the tags to pull the crypto name from column 3, the price from column 4, and the market cap from column 8.
And honestly, we can push Puppeteer even further for e-commerce scraping. Imagine extracting product info from a massive, complex site like Amazon. Puppeteer can literally simulate user actions. You can write a script that navigates to Amazon, actually types text into the search box, hits enter, and then waits for the results to load. Once the page is populated, you just target the .s-result-item CSS selector, loop through those result nodes, and extract the title and price for every single product. It is an unbelievably powerful way to automate complex data gathering.
Part 5. Essential Scraping Best Practices.
All right, here are the absolute golden rules you've got to adopt if you want to build scrapers that are scalable and frankly responsible. First up, always ensure you are respecting the website's scraping guidelines and their legal terms of service. Second, whenever it's possible, cache your data locally so you aren't hammering them with redundant requests. Third, make sure you implement reliable retry mechanisms because out on the web, things are inevitably going to fail. And finally, use request throttling and appropriate delay mechanisms. Now, what's really important to understand here is that these aren't just polite suggestions. These practical guidelines are literally exactly what prevents you from overwhelming target servers and getting your IP permanently blocked.
Web scraping with JavaScript, using everything from basic static DOM manipulation all the way up to powerful headless browsers, gives you some seriously incredible capabilities for automating data extraction. We've journeyed all the way from basic setup to rendering complex single-page applications today. But as you go out and build these tools, I want to leave you with this one thought. How will you ethically use your new JavaScript scraping superpowers? Think about the kinds of responsible, game-changing automation tools you can build. Thanks so much for joining me in this explainer, and hey, happy scraping!